Hello, Sarah. Hi, Ken. I'm grateful that Ken is here today. Ken is our special guest for the day. Sarah and I are both come from a background very humble. We're both the former refugees. And during the pandemic last year, March, we're kind of like unsettled. So we decided that we're going to have a live show. And now it has been a year and a half, a little more than a year and a half.
More.
Yeah. So we decided this last quarter, we decided from now on, our show is dedicated to help refugee in Malaysia. And that branch of nonprofit is called Refugee Film School, where they help refugee students to learn to earn money, learning graphic and video editing, and hoping that help our business community and also, you know, make a little living for themselves. So that's the gist, but we're going to go start right into the program. And if you're interested in checking out that nonprofit, is called refugeefilmschool.com. So please check them out. And if you could donate, please donate. If you need job, check with me. I can get you job. Student with very reasonable labor that can help you turn your video into a wonderful product for your website. So we're going to start with Sarah to introduce herself, and then I'm going to do a little bit, and then we're going to kick the mic over to Ken for the whole time. I promise.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. And I just want to introduce myself very quickly. I'm Sarah M. Like Lee mentioned, I grew up in Cambodia. I lived through a very hard time when my country was took over by communist Khmer Rouge, and they came in and basically destroyed our country and destroyed our life. I lived through a horrible time for 4 long years. I almost died, but God was so faithful, was so compassionate, and He saved my life. So I survived and was able to escape, and then finally escape out of the country. So arrive in United States is like a blessing, but it's a lot of challenge. But I took the risk, because if we did not take the risk, we'll stay in a very disappointed environment. So our show this month will talk about risk, about safety. So there are times that we grab safety, but there are times we have to take a risk. So in my life, in my journey, I took risks many times. So, but my risk-taking activity bring me a good result at the end. So I'm so grateful to be here and grateful to all the wonderful people that I met. I'm grateful to my co-host Lee. So
we're grateful for each other.
Yes. So I was able to publish my book, and this is my book, How I Survived the Killing Fields. You can find it on my website, sarahim.com. And now that I have the book, people want me to tell them in person. So I will go out to share and to inspire the audience. So you can reach out to us, to me or Lee. We both are able to speak, to entertain and inspire. So that's all I want to say. Back to you, Lee.
Thank you, Sarah. So yes, all of us here are speakers and authors. So so usually they'll go hand in hand. And my name is Lea Tran. If you have not seen our show before, welcome. And we hope you stay. We hope you share our show with your friends if that benefit you, or if you have a thriving story that you want to share, come on in and have a conversation with us. So I too come from a refugee background. I was neighbor with Cambodia. I came from Vietnam. I was born in Vietnam, into a family that we were doing fine until communists also took over in 1979. And also we lived 4 years under the oppression of the communists. And finally, my dad could not take it anymore. along with hundreds of thousands of other people who took the risk to go out to the sea just to search for freedom with only hope in the back. So I came from a sea route and Sarah came in from a jungle route. And I also noted my story on the TEDx stage and also on my memoir last year. This year has been a year old. My memoir has turned 1 year old. Really excited about it, and also love to go out and spread the message about many things. Like, we shouldn't settle for whatever is given for us. I mean, if my dad settled and stay there, we wouldn't have a future like I do now. So I'm really grateful for that. And there's time for safety and there's time for risky. And this is why we have Ken over here. Ken is the author of a brand new book that he just birthed a month ago. Can you tell us the title of the book, Ken?
Yes, absolutely, Leah. It's called Get WalletWise.
Get WalletWise. How beautiful is exactly what it is. And his website is called WalletWise. And Ken is a teacher. He's a man with many hats. He's a math teacher. He is an author, a speaker, and he also a coach for people for finance. So Ken, welcome to our thriving conversation. And can you give us a little bit of a snippet of your background, who you are, what you do, beside the title that I just said? But who is Ken really?
Sure. Well, thank you. And before we get started, I want to thank both you, Leah, and Sarah, for allowing me to come on your show today. I'm really honored to be here, and I want to thank you for the opportunity. And I am also someone, I would have to say, in the American style, grew up in a fairly humble beginnings, based on United States standards. Grew up in a very rural community without a lot of resources, but there was a lot of fresh air and a lot of fresh water, and so that was the payoff for that particular lifestyle, and I enjoyed it very much. And my background is of this particular, well, what's right behind me there is actually in Silver Springs, and many years ago I developed a interest and a love for photography. So I happen to have a camera that you can dip underwater. And I'm actually sitting in a canoe with my hand dangling underneath. It's just a lucky photograph.
Wow.
But I like it, and I printed it, and it comes out really nice. And I thought it was appropriate for our talk today. Know that there are probably some people out in the audience, and certainly people in the United States whose finances are a little underwater. So I thought the underwater theme might be appropriate. And then if I get out of line, there's this paddle right here that keeps hitting me in the head. So if I get out of line, just hit me over the head with the paddle. But that is part of my background. And that background, I believe, helped teach me to be very thrifty and very resourceful. And I do remember that at a fairly young age, I started my own businesses. I had a paper route, was one of my first businesses. And that also moved into a landscaping division. So I used to go around and cut people's grass. Wow. And at a very young age. And I worked as a busboy in a restaurant. And I learned a lot about people in that role, being able to watch the customers, because it was a fairly upscale restaurant for the area. And people from Jacksonville actually came to this location, rural location, because it was on the St. Johns River. And so I got to watch how well, I would say from my perspective, how the other side made, live their life. And it was an interesting experience. And like I say, I learned a lot about how people deal with each other in that type of environment. I went to college early. I'm a first generation college graduate, and I was able to chronologically get finished with 4 years of college in 3 years, because I left high school a year early to go to college. Because it was a rural community, not a lot of opportunity there. I had taken all the courses that they'd offered, and I said, okay, it's time to let me go. And they finally did, and I was allowed to go to college. And I did, and graduated with a degree in real estate and urban land economics. During the last 2 years of my college degree, I worked full time in the same community that I grew up in, very small rural community in the real estate business. And so I had an opportunity to learn a lot about real estate, and with the appraising, selling, buying, and property management, I was able to make enough money to support myself and go to school full time. And in that industry, in a small town, you also learn a lot about people and how different things are dealt with on a more risky level than, of course, watching people in the restaurant having a nice meal. But it was a very good experience. Later, I became a photographer. That was something I really enjoyed and was very fortunate to be able to get into that business, and owned a photography studio for about 7 years, right before the whole world decided to convert to digital. And I saw that coming, and I thought to myself, folks aren't going to need me much longer. So for the next 7 years, I worked for a company that sold digital imaging systems to professional photographers like myself. So I had a connection. And we helped many photographers, including folks in the government, including folks in the military, and including mom and pop photography studios, make the transition from the film world to the digital world, and then continue for the mom and pop studios for them to continue to make money. From there, I found out that the biggest or the best thing that I enjoyed doing in that position was training and teaching. And as that industry, as anybody that has been involved in the tech industry knows, you've got a very short half-life. Your industry lives and dies within 5 to 10 years. And so after about 7 years, when I was, what I was selling for $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 was now a box on the shelf for 800. And so you can't make that up in volume. So I knew that the handwriting on the wall, and I made a decision, and it was a tough decision. And it was a risky decision to go into education, into public education. And I had some ideas as to what that might look like and what that experience would be. And of course, none of my pre-ideas had anything to do with reality. But the good news is I stuck with it, I stayed with it, and I adapted. And it's been a very rewarding experience, not necessarily financially, but that's not why you get into that business. But it has been extremely rewarding. And if that had not happened, I don't think I would be here now, because in that process of becoming a math teacher, I had several opportunities to teach personal finance courses or personal finance skills to my students in a couple of my classes. But folks need to understand that that is no longer the case in public education. Because of some rules by the NCAA, any kind of personal finance course taught in a high school is not accepted for college credit on the math side of the ledger, or not accepted as high school credit when you transfer to a college. So most or all high schools said, or the Department of Education of Florida said, oh, well, then we won't do that. And so sadly, we've created a culture where we don't educate our students about the basics of personal finance. And of course, there are some consequences, other consequences to that decision, other than being able to please the NCAA. So in the act of teaching that course, it happened to happen during the same time as the Great Recession. And I had students coming to me, asking me, Mr. Remsen, what does foreclosure mean? Because my parents were talking about it at the dinner table last night.
Wow.
And I said, well, this is what it is, and I'd be happy to, I think I can help. And then I went to my principal and I said, can I get, no, you can't get involved in that. Can't do it. You're a public official, no deal. However, what conversation you have with her, the student in school, is appropriate, and you may have helped them spark a conversation so that at least they knew what was going on. And even before the Great Recession, many of my parents worked 2 and 3 jobs just to put enough beans on the table to make it work. So I knew people were struggling before the Great Recession. And of course, they've struggled even more since the Great Recession. And obviously with the pandemic, things have gotten even more interesting on the financial side. So I was very fortunate and motivated to put the different conversations and experiences that I've had personally, and also experiences that I've had helping other people right their ship financially. And that, of course, resulted in me writing the book, Get WalletWise.
Wow.
Wow.
Quite a background.
Thank you.
There's so many aspects I did not know about you. Well, Ken and I are in the same NSA class. We were in the academy class, and that's how I got to know Ken. But I did not know you were the photographer, have a photography business, and then evolved to you know, so many different aspects and become a teacher. And I want to say that a lot of them are service-based. To be a teacher is incredibly selfless, I have to say, because it is, I have known teachers in my days. My neighbors, you know, were teacher when I first married, and I adore them. I think teachers are the bravest people in this whole entire world, especially public school teachers. Head off to you, Ken. Really, I think that we need more people like you, and especially I'm sad to hear that they take away the financial course, because so many of our students have no idea how to save money, how to earn money, not just earn money, but save money. I have a lot of friends, people that who just thought plastic is the norm of what that parents give them, and then just go out and charge it. But no life skill. A lot of people get into trouble because, like what you said, they didn't have the foundation, the basic foundation of what is, you know, foreclosure. that is really sad. So you get into the financial. Are you still a teacher, Ken?
Yes. Yes.
Are you still teaching right now?
Yes.
Is there a way that you can make some drum to get the school, the government to give those students life skill, like even just a budgeting class, or know what is compound interest, or you know, credit card interest? I mean, those are the one who can burn your hole in your wallet instantly with 18 to 22% of credit card interest.
No, that is something that is on my list. However, and I don't mean that to be a negative, however, the bureaucracy is wide and the bureaucracy is deep. There are many competing agendas inside that bureaucracy. So that would almost be in itself a full-time job. And one of the other things that I suspect is just a coincidence, there's a national endowment of financial education that was created about 20 years ago to put together a financial curriculum specifically for high school students. And it's amazing. And I introduced myself to it about 15 years ago when I started teaching. And it literally gives every student a pack of 7 books. And in those 7 books is everything you would need to know in a real life world situation regarding personal finance. Extremely well written, extremely topical, and a teacher couldn't create a curriculum any better. And it's given away free. All you have to do is sign up, and you tell them, how many kids do you have in your class? 25. 2 weeks later on your front door is a case for all 20 kids to have those 7 books. There is a teacher's edition that's wonderful, resources online, amazing. So after I finished, I was doing the finishing touches on my book about 6 months ago, and I get an email from Nephi. That's the shortcut for it. Just wanted to let all of our teachers know that we are no longer planning to print the curriculum of this course, even though that was our original objective for starting our organization. We're now moving into the think tank business. And I said to myself, what this country needs is another think tank. That is exciting. And of course, don't actually provide a service to the people that really need it. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but at some level, I had to think based on what I observed and what I found from all of the research that I did for my book. It almost seemed like it was deliberate. Let's not train or educate our young people in personal finance, because there's so many tricks that we can play on them in the near future so that they do learn to overspend, so that they understand that credit cards are just a piece of plastic and there is no pain in spending that money. And let's get you wrapped up in what I like to call, and this is probably a little more negative than it needs to be, but I kind of call it the consumer industrial complex. as kind of to compare with Eisenhower's description of the military industrial complex. Let's get everybody caught up in that, because the American economy, every time on the news in economics, is described as the American economy is comprised 70% of consumer spending. So if consumers aren't spending, then 70% of our economy is not happy. And so I'm sure that the Neffy thing was just a coincidence, but it just seemed like,
that is a
the best
whole entire
we can do?
topic
Yeah.
in itself.
In itself.
Yes, yes.
Totally.
That is so much deeper than we want to discuss over here.
Right. And then
But
the aspect of getting financial courses back in is in direct competition with the agenda by the NCAA, which, as a math teacher, I scratch my head going, why is the NCAA dictating to the Department of Education what's going on? And at first I just didn't believe it when I heard it. And then I did the research and kept scratching, and that's what I found out. That's why there are only specific math courses taught in the state of Florida. And this also goes across the country as well.
I think so many of us, our generation here, we're a little wiser about money because we came from hardship.
Right.
Because
That's
we
exactly
came
right.
from watching our parents save every dimes and nickels and not just going out and tossing plastic and do instant gratifications. And I think it's sad that we kind of like ignore our younger generations, and everybody want to graduate from college and make six figures like in 3 years. There's no patience about doing a good job. They just want to jump and do making big money, which is a lot of them, like Microsoft and all these people giving them an idea that you can be innovative, think tank, you can make money quick. But that's probably 1 out of a million people that would be able to get there. Not to be in the negative side either, but the basic foundation of finance, budget, and spending are super, super critical. And I want to thank you for not giving up. I want to thank you for keep moving to help our students and for your book. Tell us a little bit about your book.
Sure, thank you. Get WalletWise, as I said, got its start during the Great Recession. It is an accumulation of experiences that I've had on my own and experiences that I've shared with my family and experiences that I've shared with my clients. And I've kind of accumulated all of those stories and all of those experiences, and I remembered all of them. And starting about 10 or 11 years ago, started jotting down some of the things that I found interesting in the world of finance. I also have to give credit to another book that was written that actually turned into a documentary back just before the Great Recession. And if anyone has time to check it out, it's worth spending the time on. And it's pretty inexpensive to actually get a hold of on Amazon. And it's a book and movie called Maxed Out. And that book and movie, Maxed Out, of course, is talking about how all Americans are just up over their ears in debt. And the book also shows you how the debt markets in this country work. And one of the most interesting things that I found in that book and in the movie was something that I was not aware of. And I have a degree in finance, and that is that there are debt brokers. So when you are in a situation where you have a bill that's unpaid and then goes into collections, well, the company that you owe the money to, they're only going to spend a couple of weeks trying to collect it. And so they're going to sell the debt. Well, I understood that, but I didn't really understand, well, who did they sell it to? Well, they sell it to the collection agents for pennies on the dollar. So if you owe $100 and then the company that owns the debt, they just sell it to the debtor for $1. And then when the debt collector calls you and you pay only $50, well, they have quite a return on their investment. And I never understood how they worked. And this movie and book explained that to me. And that was a little shocking to me. But on the other side of the coin, when I spent time in the Neffy course in the high school, here is a person that has a finance degree in front of a math class, and I did not know was not no one ever explained this to me, that there was a company, a great company that I highly recommend to anyone, and it's called ComputerShare. And what ComputerShare is a company that we call in the investing world as a transfer agent. And the reason why it's called that is because you can sign up and invest in any of the companies that ComputerShare represents, and you can buy major corporate stock for as little as $25 a month. Company we're talking about. Every company has different rules. Every company has different amounts of money that you can invest in. But this ComputerShare allowed me, who did not have a lot of money, I was a teacher, to actually get started in investing in individual stocks in a very safe and secure way, taking advantage of dollar cost averaging. And then the company automatically reinvested the dividends if you were investing in a company that had dividends, which I highly recommend. Because during the Great Recession, what was interesting is I would invest in very boring utility stocks, consumer goods companies like Coca-Cola, a utility like Next Era Energy, a water utility. And what was fun to watch is when the stock market was going down during the Great Recession, those went up. And I thought,
Yeah,
well,
commodity is always a good place to invest.
And I was just learning. I was just learning at the time. And then when the stock market hit the bottom and started to turn around and go up, well, they went up again. I was like, oh, okay. Interesting learning experience. And I'm liking it so far. So it was kind of fun to buy General Electric at $4 a share and ride it up to 30. That was kind of a lot of fun to do. And of course, it was just dumb luck on my part. I was just in the right place at the right time. But if I again had not become a math teacher, had not gone into public education, I don't know where I would have heard about ComputerShare, because your financial planner is not going to tell you about it, because that's competition to them. And it was never discussed in my finance classes in college.
What is the risky way to share, and what is the safe way that people should be taking care when they're investing?
In my book, I have a very clear, basically 3-point plan on how to save and invest. And of course, the first thing we want to do before we even get involved in that, I'll simply put it in one sentence: we need to spend less than we earn. Mm-hmm. And that's many chapters in my book and another conversation. But if we can get to the point where we are spending less than we earn, then we have some margin that we can save. That money can be saved. And the first thing we need to do is save for an emergency fund. Mm-hmm. And most people recommend about 6 months. And I agree with that. However, if your budget is tight, like most people's is, then set a goal of 1 month. At least that way, if you've got a $400 expense 6 months from now, you'll be able to cover it. If something breaks on your car, you'll be able to take care of it. If the washer breaks down, you'll be able to repair it without having to rely on credit. And then continue to build up that 6-month emergency fund. And that money does not go anywhere risky whatsoever. It goes into something as simple as what I used to call a passport savings account. And so it's totally safe, doesn't earn any interest. It's not being invested. I would not put it even in a money market fund. Okay. I wouldn't necessarily put.
What is money market fund now? 1%?
Yeah, they're actually not very exciting. They're not very exciting at all. And I do want to back up a second. A money market fund is a little different than a money market account. Money market fund is not backed by the FDIC. A money market account is, so you could safely put it in a money market account and be okay. The only problem with that, well, actually, that's actually a good place to put it, because you can get access to the money quickly in case of emergency. You've got things wrapped up in other investment vehicles, then that money is not in a good place for you to use as an emergency account. So after your emergency account is fully funded, at least 6 months, then the first thing we look at is if you have access to a 401k or a 403b. And a lot of people do, but also a lot of people don't. But if you do, you want to take advantage of the company matching. And what I suggest is that you invest enough in your 403b or 401k to take advantage of the maximum company match. and you'll need to go through the documents and maybe even get your human resources people to help you figure out what that dollar amount is and how much the match is. I've worked with clients who've had companies that actually matched 100%, which is great. And it also depends on what position you are in the company. And then, of course, I've worked with folks that they get a 10% match, but that's better than nothing, and it's free money. So you want to take advantage of that. And as soon as you've reached the amount of money invested in the 401k that allows you to get the maximum, then you stop. And here's why. 401k plans are very expensive with regard to their management fees. They charge the individual account owner a lot more money than they probably would need to actually maintain the account. And so at that point, I've met my maximum, I've got my full match from my employer, then I'm done with that for the year. Then step two is then any extra money that I have beyond that, if I'm lucky enough and I'm budgeting well enough to do that, then we start looking at IRA accounts. And that is our next step, because it's another tax benefit plan in which you are shielding income and saving some tax dollars at the same time while you're saving. It literally reduces your income that gets taxed at the end of the year. So you're kind of getting a double benefit for just saving. And so the IRAs are relatively simple to set up. And the company that I recommend, and there are many good companies, but the one I recommend the most is Vanguard. They're very easy to get along with. They have a fairly easy format or platform on the internet. And then you set up those IRAs, and then you finance those to the legal max. And those funds with Vanguard are very inexpensive. So their fees are some of the lowest in the industry. And so they're a company that, in my opinion, was built and designed by a gentleman by the name of Jeff Bogle, who basically was a consumer advocate. He was interested in helping the regular guy, the little guy like me who grew up in the country, to be able to start investing and not be afraid of doing it. Didn't have to hire a fancy, expensive finance planner. Not that there's anything wrong with that. However, it is a great way to get started in the financial savings world without having to be sophisticated. And in my book, I discuss about a half a dozen very stable, safe mutual funds. And as everyone knows, a mutual fund is a collection or a basket of stocks, maybe hundreds of them in a fund that basically protects you from one company having a hiccup and maybe going out of business.
Yeah.
And I've owned mutual funds enough that I've watched that happen. I've watched my friends that have owned mutual funds. A company went bankrupt inside the fund. It's worth zero, especially during the Great Recession. That financial crisis saw a number of companies go from values of $30 a share down to zero. Sadly, I saw that in the actual Florida's pension fund, and I was just kind of shaking my head. We didn't see this coming, did we? But that was over. Yeah, so that was interesting to observe from a distance. And that's one of the themes in my book regarding, let's say, money missteps. Try to learn from other people's money missteps. Try not to make your own if you can. Learn from other people's mistakes, not only in just financial stuff, but in other things in life as well, because the price of admission is a lot less expensive than when you have to make the mistake. So I always learned about those companies that went bust and what caused them to go bust. Then after I've got, number one, the 401k maxed out so I can get my company match if I have one. Number two, in my IRA, and I only max that out to the government kind of tells you how much. It's like $7,500 for some person like myself that's over 55. I believe it's $6,000 for everyone else. And so if you max that out, then what do? Only then do we now step into the computer share company that I just discussed with you earlier. It's about the safest way to invest in individual stocks. But I will say investing in individual stocks is the riskiest of all of the strategies that I've just previously discussed. And if you're not interested in doing the homework, meaning you've got to go in and understand what a good company is and read a balance sheet. I'm a math teacher. I have a finance degree. and I'm very good at reading a balance sheet. Well, not everybody is. And if you're not, and you're not interested in learning that skill, totally understand. Then just continue to invest in a Vanguard index fund, and you'll be safe and happy, and you'll be getting almost the same returns as a goofball like myself is getting and betting, not betting, but investing on individual companies.
Well,
And
oh, sorry. But
Yeah.
so is the book is mostly about investing, or does it have a whole other thing like budgeting and
Right.
regular, the normal stuff before the investing things? Because sometimes a lot of people are struggling right now just to hold their paycheck for the spending part. And so
Right. No worries there. So there's only 2 chapters in the book about savings. There is a single chapter that's titled Savings and Investing. And then there's a second chapter about retirement planning, which is a little more specific about how we get ourselves ready for retirement. It's more like preparing for retirement. No matter what age you are, you'll get a good nugget out of those 2 chapters. That's toward the end of the book, which is kind of logical, because at the beginning of the book, we talk about money missteps. We talk about things to avoid so that you don't lose your money. For example, I have a chapter about DUI. And I think a lot of young people don't understand that a DUI is going to be a $10,000 bill on the first one. And so if you want to foul up your finances, a DUI is a good way to do it. And I'm trying to suggest that that would be a good thing to avoid, not for all the other ramifications and risk involved in that, but simply because of the financial situation that you put yourself in. And it's a really big one. And so I discuss other missteps similar to that. I have a chapter that's totally dedicated to unnecessary expenses. And those unnecessary expenses are things that I've experienced in my life, where I had family members that borrowed money to buy a nice boat. In my opinion, if you're going to go buy a nice boat, you probably ought to be able to pay for it and afford it. Going into debt to buy a depreciating asset like a boat is not the best idea. If you can afford it and afford to pay cash for it, then that's fine.
Those are luxury items.
It is a luxury item, and luxury items probably shouldn't be financed on credit.
Right.
So there's a whole chapter, and that's just one example of many unnecessary expenses that people tend to get excited about spending money on that they don't have, that they haven't earned.
Yeah.
And then we talk about the second half of the book about creating positive money habits. And that discusses that is called Chapter 12, Money Management. And we get started right away about starting a budget. And in that chapter, there's literally Excel. And I hope that didn't scare anybody off. How many people hung up when I said Excel? It's not scary. It's not scary at all. Because the book explains how to do it quickly and nicely, and links to my website where you can download a complete Excel file that's all done for you, and you can read it without having to understand anything about programming or how to use Excel. All you got to do is plug in your number and it automatically calculates everything. I've done all the hard work for you. So all you have to do is that website, start plugging in your income, start plugging in your expenses, which is already categorized, I believe, in about 17 different categories. And then you just plug those numbers in. And when you get done plugging in your numbers, at the bottom, it's going to tell you, you've got more money than month, or you've got more month than money. And so you figure out, so you figure out if you are in the black or if you're in the red. And if you're in the red,
I have Ken's book, and how, don't mean to cut you short, but how do people get your book, Ken? And and where can they find your book? If you have a link, and I'm sure, I have Ken's book, Guilty at Charge. I am putting a time to read it and to educate myself on things that I don't know. And I have been through life a lot, and I still need a lot to learn from, to know. And and it's really exciting. I think, how you can tell how passionate Ken is and about the topic and the subject matter. And everything is risky. If you don't do anything, you are taking the risk of losing everything.
That's right.
possibly. Not that, not that you will, but if
Right.
you plan or you fail, or you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? So this is
Exactly.
just part of it. And don't let the word finance scare you. Go grab the book.
Yeah, I've got a story about that. My daughter took a finance class in college. And one of the things the professor impressed on all of the students was, I would do anything that I could if I could just change the name of this class and get the word finance out of it, because apparently the word finance is one of the, I guess, the second or third most intimidating words.
It is scary.
Yeah. And I totally
something about make money or something.
Yes, but money doesn't, I don't know,
learn about money making or something like that. But
exactly.
It doesn't matter what it's called. It's your money. You don't take care of it. Somebody else's will.
Well, that's funny that you say that. It's funny that you say that. I was very fortunate. I didn't, of course, I was not on the side of the family that actually inherited anything from his side, but I had a great uncle who was a Wall Street underwriter, bond underwriter, and had worked on Wall Street since the late 20s and was actually on the New York Stock Exchange as a page. He was a page. He was just a young man working on the floor during the stock market crash of 1929. And so I had some opportunity to spend some time with him when I was in my 20s and he was in his 90s. And I just was so blessed to have my conversations with him. And boy, I asked a lot of questions. And one of the things that he said to me one day, I'll never forget, and it's in the book, and it's just a favorite quote of mine, and it says, "Money doesn't care who it belongs to." Now, there's a positive side to that, but there's another side of the coin too. I suspect that when we were working with a salesperson in negotiating some sort of product or service, that on the other side of the table, that person's thinking the same thing. In fact, I've been to sales seminars where I was told that, or learned that, if you don't regard that in that negotiation, that it's your money that's in the other person's pocket, then you're not really thinking right as a salesperson. I was like, whoa, that's a little over the top. But my Uncle Al, his saying is not over the top. His saying is right on point, because money doesn't care who it belongs to. So if you want to waste your money on unnecessary expenses and not manage it, and again, I'm not saying don't live your life. I'm not saying don't have a good time. In fact, I suggest budgeting some money to go have a good time and live your life and do some fun things. And that was another reason why I wanted this picture in the background. This was a time where my wife and I and some friends of ours from school specifically set time aside out of our life to go do something fun. And we went to Silver Spring State Park. We rented canoes. They brought their kayaks, and we had a great time. I'm not saying that you make a budget so that you just sit home and be a hermit for the rest of your life. That's not good either. And that is, of course, discussed in the Charles Dickens story, A Christmas Story, where Ebenezer Scrooge is the miser of misers. He had a lot of money. He had a great budget. His net worth was phenomenal, but he didn't have a very good life. I'm not suggesting that that's a good option either. There has to be a balance.
Absolutely. This is such a great nuggets, and sometimes the hit of reality that you don't want. There's so many things, but I want to be respectful for the audience time. We are like way over, and I can sit here actually listen and learn from you all day.
Thank you.
A lot of great things that we really sometimes we have to take the time to face that reality and worry about our money. So we can have a better life going forward, because it's no fun being in debt.
No.
Trust me, no fun. So anyway, thank you so much, Ken. I put the link out on the chat on the below our video. Hopefully people will go and buy the book, and hopefully they will connect with you. And if they need help, you are providing that service too, right?
Exactly. So I'm also a financial coach, or a money coach if you prefer, and I help people get things right with their money. And I also like to help them secure their well-being, because money has an emotional aspect to it that a lot of financial planners are just starting to learn about. I don't think that
Yeah.
they've ignored it, but they're starting to get
There's a
into it.
human side to it. It's
There
just
is.
not all dry. A lot of people
No.
are dry and all about numbers, but it's very, very emotional when you talk
is.
about, yeah. So thank you so much, Ken, for being on here and being
My pleasure.
and share with us your book, your life story, and the risk that you took and the reward that you have, and all this fun stuff that behind you. So thank you so much. Hopefully this is helpful to you, and hopefully that will remind you about budgeting, spending, investing. They are all very critical. If we don't take the time to do that, we are risking our future, and that's no fun.
I just want to add that this is neutral advice from a non-licensed product-driven person. So you can you
That is
give
correct. Right.
honest, neutral advice.
Yeah.
Correct.
So that's
Yeah,
wonderful.
we don't,
Yeah, he's
sell
a
any-
math teacher with heart. So he wants the world to be a better
Right.
place for many people.
Right.
So thank you again. And that's why I respect Ken a lot for
Thank you.
doing what he does. He could have just branched out and be a financial planner. There's nothing wrong with that. But his heart is with helping students, helping parents, helping other people on the side of his whatever as a teacher. So very, very thankful. Well, have a great night, everyone. We hope to see you next week again with the same theme for this October. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you, Ken. Bye.
Bye-bye.